All right, Luke. I definitely agree with. We're agreeing a lot. There's a lot of agreement. Um, but you're saying you're. I agree with you that art can't be objectively criticized, and you can't say anything about art that you can't say it's good or bad or anything like that. But you want to define art because it seems to me like defining art is exactly what the art critics are doing when they say that the Pollock's paintings aren't good. They're saying no, that's outside of art. The art's over here. Pollock's painting's over there, and here's the border because we said so. And that's like that seems to be what we do whenever we define anything. I think. I mean, maybe that's not what you mean by definition. Um, to me, definitions aren't the goal for me. I don't want to know definitions necessarily because definitions are limiting. When you have a conversation about a word, especially a word like art, um, you're not going to be able to find anything stable because the conversation itself is going to inevitably become some kind of an artistic endeavor because I think any kind of speech is an artistic expression. Any kind of conveyance of meaning is artistic. That's why I think nature is art. And I mean, I guess this is my definition of art. I'm trying to define art, but I'm not really trying to say that the words that I'm using are the only words that should be associated with this word art. I'm just making art in the way that I know how to do it. Making art to express the meaning of art. Um, and beautiful things are beautiful, and they don't have to be art. You're saying we don't have to call it art. Um, so beautiful, nature is beautiful, and because if there's no God to create it, then it's not art. It's just beautiful because it's an accident, right? So an art can't be an accident. Art has to be planned or purposeful or because I mean I don't know if that's where you were trying to lead, but I don't know. I mean, I agree with it. Can be. It can be planned. It can be designed and engineered. That's art. That's a technique. That's technology and science. But art can also be spontaneous too, though. It can be improvisation. It can be just. I mean, there's a larger harmony you would hope, or a larger discord that somehow creates an unexpected harmony that you can't really measure in any qualitative or quantitative way. Um, you talked about that guy who was on a cave and he was about to die, and the last thing he did was just cut himself open and draw a blood painting on the wall. And you know, you asked if that's art because no one's really going to get to see it, but someone got to see it. He got to see it. In fact, he had the most powerful experience and connection with that piece of art as anyone could have ever had. Because I think that's why I think that it requires an artist to appreciate art because I think the artist appreciates art the most when they are creating art. That's why there's always I feel there has to be this subjective perception of something to make it art because to see the beauty in it, the subject has to participate in the creation of it. The subject has to um, not necessarily project themselves onto it, but project themselves into it, allow it to open up before them. Because before a painting opens up to a subject, it's just dirt on a piece of paper, or you know, If a tree falls in the forest and nobody's there to hear it, does it make a sound? See, that to me sounds more like a Zen koan than an actual question. It's a paradox, in other words. It's beyond the limits of reason or beyond the limits of language and logic to make sense of that question. It's sort of a meaningless statement. We could write poetry about it, but to ask that question for an objective answer is not possible. I don't think. I can't, or at least I can't begin to answer it. So it's difficult to have art without a perceiver, because only artists can appreciate art, and but there's no bad artists. I would say there's only people that don't know that they are artists. So people that don't know that they are artists don't usually appreciate art. Or, I mean, everybody appreciates some form of art, but the less cultured people just haven't recognized their own creativity. And because they haven't recognized their own creativity, they haven't recognized creativity in others. As far as elitism, in art specifically, you mentioned it's a bad thing because, with Pollock, it's like, or Pollock, it's like it prevented him from being in the spotlight when eventually it turned out he should have been, and that kind of criticism prevents other artists from developing their work. But I don't think that having an elite group of critics in art is necessarily a bad thing, because it's just like science in a sense, that the elite's opinions are very unstable, and they're always changing and being forced to adapt to new cultural situations and new means of expression. And it's just like science. Like we could compare Pollock to Einstein, because when Einstein first came out with the theory of relativity, all the other physicists, thought it was bullshit because they couldn't understand it. And finally, a few physicists, like there were probably a handful that could actually understand Einstein's math at the time when he first came out, when he first published it, and they defended it and said, no, he's right. And it took a few years for these physicists to understand what Einstein was doing before they agreed that, wow, he's a genius. And so there's an elite interpretation of good observational data in science that's always being overturned, and it's the same way in the elite of the art critics, I think. So yeah, I think I covered all I had to say. We don't. I don't think we have to define art. I just think we have to. It's important to have conversations about it and to communicate and add context to the word. You don't have to define what the word is necessarily. You put an environment around it to express its reflection in an efficient and an accurate way. That's all. Because it's impossible to define a word, I think, any word, especially art.